Amid global economic turmoil and recession, one business is booming. The illegal trade of counterfeit and criminal goods is rampant. You're about to enter a vast international underworld that deals in anything. From fake handbags to people, deadly weapons, drugs and corruption at the highest levels.
The black market is on steroids.
It's almost impossible to fight that kind of illicit activity.
From cocaine-carrying submarines off South America to the mean mafia-infested streets of Naples and the secret Asian sweatshops churning out thousands of fakes a week.
What drives illicit trade is greed.
You're about to discover the real cost of black market goods.
This is now on a scale that we have never seen before. These people are running countries.
This is an alarming investigation into how the black market corrupts and kills.
They may not be pulling a trigger, but they're killing people in another way.
It's a common scene on ordinary street corners in any major city. A buyer looking for a bargain, a trader with goods to sell, a demand, a supply, and ultimately a deal. But this seemingly harmless fake handbag is emblematic of a dark trade that is growing at alarming speed. Some experts estimate that up to 10% of the world's trade is illicit, and a global crime wave comes with it.
When somebody buys a fake handbag, they are touching the tip of an iceberg.
For 10 years, Foreign Policy magazine editor Dr. Moises Naim has been investigating illegal trade.
They're touching the end of a very long chain of networks that in fact constitute a criminal enterprise of global nature.
It's the dark side of globalization. Though it takes place worldwide, China provides some of the best examples of how it works. As the Chinese economy booms, luxury goods companies have hired a small army of investigators to protect their brands. Former New York City cop Ted Kavoris is now a private investigator working out of Hong Kong. Ted and his agent pose as tourists, the kind eager for a bargain and a certain thrill buyers won't get at a shopping center. He doesn't have long to wait before he's picked up by hustlers, also known as touts, on the lookout for trade.
What kind like shirt maybe? Louis Vuitton, yeah.
And the touts will be some people with some linguistic ability in English or European languages, bring in the clients, talk to them, get the best price they can, squeeze blood from a stone.
Louis Vuitton, do you like? How much?
The counterfeiters try to snare potential customers by showing them catalogs from which to select their dream bag.
I haven't seen Hermes anywhere else, so...
China is an ideal place for counterfeiters. To the local officials, they are positive economic assets because they produce jobs, they create revenue, they pay taxes, and also they pay local officials dividends.
These dividends, or bribes, are an additional cost of doing business.
The profits are immense. I mean, better than dealing drugs and much safer.
The fakes are not kept in the open in case of a raid. Instead, the hustlers make contact with a nearby warehouse where the bootleg goods are stored. Only when they think it's safe do they bring in the buyers. But in a business both lucrative and illegal, they take precautions.
Can I see your passport? No, you can't see my passport, but I give you my card.
On the way to the warehouse, other hustlers trail behind, making sure no one is following. The touts have to balance making a sale against being arrested by customs agents. There are hidden networks round the world making thousands of fakes, the black market is booming. Back in New York, our buyer and her bag disappear into the crowd. But a closer look reveals that illicit goods are all around. And it's not just the usual fake sunglasses, watches, and trainers. There could be bogus toothpaste, pharmaceuticals, or car brakes bought in ignorance. Beneath the surface, we're surrounded by all manner of illicit goods. The kidney bought from a broker in India. Or the illegal nanny paid for by an overworked professional couple. The drug dealer with heroin from Afghanistan and cocaine from Colombia. The banker who launders money for ultra-rich clients or foreign politicians. The spoils of the illicit market are everywhere. A black market boom bolstered by events in the 1990s.
In the 90s, two very important revolutions took place. One was a revolution in politics, the other was a revolution in technology. The revolution in politics melted the borders.
The free market had free rein. Legitimate businesses could now move labor, money, and products with unprecedented ease, and the global economy boomed. Criminals and black marketeers went along for the ride. At the same time, technology shrank the world. The internet allowed shadowy traders to hawk their wares in cyberspace.
At the click of a mouse, you could get guns, mercenaries, kidneys, all sorts of prohibited goods. This is really different from anything we have seen before.
Perhaps more importantly, electronic banking allowed criminals to move their profits and make payments with the ease of going to a high street bank.
When you stand in front of an ATM machine, you're standing in front of a border.
You don't have to show your passport when you send money across continents. It's almost untraceable and instantaneous. Criminal networks adapted faster to these new conditions than legitimate businesses.
Smuggling is nothing new, but it's now global. Its networks operate like criminal multinational corporations. Nigerian drug traffickers connect with their counterparts in Thailand. Ukrainian gun runners work with Moroccan criminals. Money launderers in Moscow work with stockbrokers in Manhattan. The black market is on steroids.
It's exactly original upstairs. Same 100% exactly original.
Exact.
Yeah, same original. Exactly.
Good quality.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Because I don't want
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back in Hong Kong, undercover investigator Ted Kavoris is dealing with the retail arm of one of these networks. Video evidence may help shut down the shopfront, but the objective is to close the factory where the fakes are made. To do that, the investigation turns to the sprawling city of Guangzhou, the suspected hub of large-scale illicit manufacturing. Here, investigators find rolls of fake designer fabric and a huge supply of bogus luxury logos on open display. It's thought that buyers from a variety of countries around the world are here to place bulk orders.
The consumer overseas who want a cheap handbag, fueling the demand from China. And they're also teaching the Chinese a different level of sophistication in terms of what the products are. But again, the sophistication will depend on the degree of demand from these overseas clients, because they'll instruct the Chinese exactly what they want.
Virtually anything can be ordered and illegally reproduced. Through reverse engineering or stolen blueprints, everything from car parts to razors are fake.
In China, the counterfeit industry is so huge. It employs so many people. It feeds so many families. It's so intertwined with government agencies that drastic radical action to take it down will destabilize any government that attempts to do that.
It's almost impossible to fight that kind of illicit activity because their numbers are huge, they're everywhere, they're well connected, they have their own networks.
Chinese customs is trying to stop it. They're working with US customs out of the ports of Hong Kong and Shanghai to pre-inspect containers. But critical work in the field is often done by private investigators. After 3 years of undercover work, agents finally get a hidden camera into an illicit factory. This factory alone produced over 10,000 bags a week, working 3 shifts every 24 hours. The Chinese government eventually shut the factory down, and the owner was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But a hallmark of these networks is their resilience. Though a manufacturer may be stopped, the company that ships their goods abroad may still be thriving. In the wholesale markets of Guangzhou, shipping agents are on hand, pitching for business.
New York, Italy, Middle East, Africa, Ocean Center. Yeah.
Oh, good. Go everywhere.
We have many very good relationship with the ship line, so we can check the price for
But
you.
this service comes with a price.
Do you mind my asking?
One for shipping legitimate goods and one for
Your
fakes.
goods are some copies, such as the watches. They may charge a little bit high to do something about the custom. It's a little bit high.
Doing something about customs costs about 30% more per container at this company. Bribery is the essential lubricant of all illicit trades worldwide. In China, it is an art form. During seasonal festivals here, it's customary for officials to receive small gifts. But inside a box of cakes can be anything from the title for a luxury car to the deed for an apartment, or even a private scholarship for a son to go to university.
Those people who make fake handbags in China may not be themselves criminals, but willy-nilly they create an underground network through which other illegal activities can also take place and spread.
I mean, if you have a container of counterfeit bags, why not throw a kilo of cocaine into it, or plutonium or something else? I mean, I don't want to overstate the danger, but it's this entirely unregulated Wild West activity.
The handbag may seem harmless, but in fact it travels through a supply chain that can carry far more sinister products, from AK-47s to machinery to build atomic weapons.
Based on information from undercover investigator Ted Kavoris, Customs Police raid the warehouse. Police have been poised to move once customers are caught in the act. A couple of American tourists and their hapless guide are about to have an unscheduled meeting with the Chinese police.
I don't like this.
Tourists are normally embarrassed, and they should be. I mean, you're supporting an industry that's got a very dangerous dark side to it.
The dark side of the black market stretches far beyond the manufacture of designer bags. In Bogota, Colombia, another private investigation is revealing details about a far deadlier type of production: fake pharmaceuticals. Here, too, private investigators take the lead. In this case, an investigator known only as the Soldier directs the undercover operation. Due to threats on his life, his identity has to remain secret.
Utilizo prostitutas, delincuentes
I recruit
comunes,
people from within the counterfeiting networks. I use prostitutes, crooks, reformed counterfeiters, and make them my spies and informants.
Hasta que les encuentro el ilícito.
The soldier is meeting a former counterfeiter who is now his partner. Because the stakes are so high, she too must remain anonymous. We'll call her Rosa. Together, their objective is to shut down a major player. The soldier needs Rosa because she's a familiar face in this murky world where connections count. But this is a tricky assignment. Rosa hasn't met the target before. His name is Saul Lopez, but in the fashion of the Bogota underworld, he too has a nickname, the Worm. The soldier has been watching him for weeks. At 9 a.m., Rosa sets up a meeting with the Worm to buy fake drugs at a local market. A secret camera, disguised as a button, will record the buy. The soldier will stay nearby as backup, and they arrange a signal if she needs his help. Most deals like these happen quickly. Through trial and error, the counterfeiters can produce a pretty convincing pill. Colombian authorities have documented that raw materials come from India, China, as well as the local market.
They mix a little of this, they mix a little of that. Does it stick together? Let's put in some more glue and a little more paint, please. And oh, we need some shininess. Let's have some wax.
Tests have revealed a surprising list of typical ingredients. Boric acid, more often used for pesticides. Yellow highway paint, made with lead, is added to give color. Startup costs are minuscule. In this case, the fakers converted button-pressing machines to form a primitive production line.
Obviously, they lack the speed of a up-to-date pharmaceutical manufacturing facility, but labor is cheap, and people will sit there all day and methodically punch out the product.
Pills are dried under light bulbs in a modified cupboard. It may look amateur, but they can punch out up to 60,000 pills a week with a street value of up to $50,000. Nearly 8 hours after the soldier dropped Rosa off, the deal still hasn't gone down. The Worm has repeatedly changed locations, possibly to make sure Rosa is not being followed. Finally, 10 hours after she started, Rosa hands over the money for the fake pills. This time, it's for painkillers and stomach medication. Investigations have revealed fake drugs like these are distributed regionally, though some have made it into the United States. Later, 2 separate tests confirmed they were fake. A few weeks later, based on the soldier's evidence, the Colombian police arrested the Worm and his partners. But he's back on the streets, while his case is under investigation.
It's high reward, low risk. If you get caught, you're not going to jail. We've seen the evolution of counterfeit prescription medicines from the local chemical guy to organized crime, international narcotics traffickers in Colombia, syndicates in China, drug trafficking organizations in Mexico.
The difficulty of stopping this is that this is a global, transnational problem.
Add the internet to this sort of global crime, and stopping these international criminals gets even harder. Whether online illicit traders are pushing guns, drugs, or pharmaceuticals. Just ask Mark Kolowich. Before he was arrested for the sale of counterfeit drugs, Kolowich was the head of an illicit online pharmacy based in San Diego.
The internet is an amazingly easy place to come up with an idea very quickly, and of course, if you hit the bullseye, you can make a lot of money very quickly.
This is not amateur hour in international crime. These are sophisticated, intelligent, innovative people.
Mark Kolowich's idea was simple. He bought bogus cut-rate Viagra from pharmacies in Tijuana, Mexico, then sold it at much higher prices to customers around the world. Whereas most smugglers would see the border as an obstacle, Kolowich saw it as an opportunity to make money.
The border is basically all profiling, and if you don't fit into that suspicious profile, myself being middle class, driving a fairly decent car, you move very easily back and forth across that border.
Borders illustrate the vast challenges faced by authorities battling to stop illicit trade. At the San Isidro crossing, Kolowich was one of 50,000 drivers who crossed every day.
National borders are great for traffickers, but they are a nightmare for law enforcement.
We all agree that the bad guys always have the advantage because they don't have rules, they don't have regulations. They can buy the most powerful weapon. They can corrupt the most incorruptible official. They can spend money in ways that we can never imagine.
In 2007, US and Colombian Coast Guards seized 13 custom-built submarines, some capable of carrying up to 10 tons of cocaine. With illicit trade, demand is the mother of invention. In his first year of business, Kolowich says he made $1 million.
Sales went through the roof. That then led to other drugs, Lipitor, Celebrex, Xanacal.
With the money rolling in from almost 65,000 customers, Kolowich could afford a dream lifestyle, all paid for with dirty money.
We used to go helicopter skiing in Mount Whistler up in British Columbia. Chartered yachts in Cabo San Lucas. I had somebody I hired to scout the country for good wines. It wasn't uncommon to go out to dinner and spend $1,000, $1,200.
After 5 years, Kolowich had created an international network. Fakes from India were shipped through Mexico and onto San Diego. In the same period, he claims he made $24 million. But ultimately, his own technology helped to bring him down. When one of his staff quit his job, he was allowed to take an office computer with him. When he then pawned the laptop, a technician found details of his dubious drug transactions and shared them with the FBI and US Customs. Mark Kolowich was convicted and served nearly 3 years in prison. When illicit goods move, an illicit wave follows. The dirty money and corruption it brings crashes onto loading docks worldwide. The port of Naples is one of the major cargo hubs in southern Europe and the type of porous entry point illicit traders need. Luca Vespignani is a private investigator who has tracked illicit trade here for over a decade.
Everything that can be counterfeited comes to Naples. So CDs, DVDs, fashion goods, I don't know, like bags, glasses, dresses, fake airline parts, drugs, weapons. Every illegal goods comes here in Naples. Why? Let's say that it's very difficult to inspect all the containers. Let's say that there's a certain level of corruption in the port of Naples. But the main reason, I think, is that Camorra is here.
The Camorra, the Naples Mafia, helps to traffic uninspected goods into Europe. In an attempt to stop them, Italy's finance police use a variety of techniques. They conduct spot checks of documents, but many of these can be easily forged. 65% of shipments that pour into Naples are Chinese. Investigative reporter Roberto Seviano believes that the Camorra and the Chinese illicit traders have formed a network.
Diventano interlocutori di intere
The
compagnie.
Camorra skim a percentage of all the containers. They serve as middlemen with the transportation and shipping companies. This means China has discovered a duty-free port here.
Because of threats from the Camorra, Seviano is often a prisoner in his own apartment with round-the-clock bodyguards. He earned the Camorra's death sentence by publishing a book that revealed intricate details of their criminal empire.
E mi fece immediatamente pensare a quello che dice.
I'm reminded of something a boss once told me.
Il sistema.
The Camorra has only 3 principles.
Business, business, business.
But unlike crime families of old, Seviano says the Camorra's business has gone global.
La Camorra è stata la
The
prima.
Camorra was among the first to invest in Eastern Europe when the communist regimes fell. They have their tentacles in Spain and England, South America and Africa.
In Naples, the surge of illicit goods is so heavy, they execute raids every week. Based on a tip, the police are heading into a part of Naples under Camorra control.
Vedrete che iniziano a fischiare o iniziano a parlare ad alta voce.
Well, they start whistling and talking loudly to each other. It's to warn of our arrival.
Avvisano del pericolo, essenzialmente.
The police find their target, an illicit warehouse inside an apartment building packed with fake DVDs and bogus computer programs.
Ok. Stiamo prendendo il borso.
Vendors from all over Italy come to warehouses like these to buy illicit goods wholesale. One raid revealed a massive DVD burning operation. Stacks of blank DVDs and hundreds of burners, all crammed into a single family's apartment. In this small space alone, there is $150,000 worth of goods. Because of lookouts, the police rarely catch the criminals. Instead, they simply confiscate their goods. But it's a mere drop in the black market ocean.
You can imagine that here we have hundreds of places like this one, hundreds of warehouses with thousands of CDRs and hundreds of CD burning facilities. So they usually do raids every week, on a week basis.
The volume of fakes like these is directly linked to an even more troubling side of the black market economy. For every 1,000 items to be sold, illicit traders need someone to do the selling. Often the illicit sales force is illegally transported by the same networks moving the fakes. To traffickers, these human beings are just another commodity to be rammed through the supply chain. Every migrant has to pay a price to get to the developed world. Many will sink into a kind of debt bondage, modern slaves.
Millions of people around the world are willing to risk their life for a better future. Traffickers know this and exploit it.
According to UN figures, human trafficking is a $30 billion a year enterprise and the fastest growing sector of the illicit economy. Even after security was stepped up in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, the number of people crossing illegally into America is roughly 500,000 a year. Some come in on their own, but many have paid traffickers to get them in. Research has revealed that Chinese counterfeiters work with Nigerian traffickers to bring Senegalese workers into cities in Europe and the United States, forging an informal illicit labor network. In Naples, the Senegalese are the foot soldiers of illicit trade, and its human face.
È vero che sappiamo che questa cosa non è giusto.
I know it's wrong to sell illegal DVDs, and that makes me frightened. But I do it for one reason, to survive. But the fear is there from morning to night.
Solo questo.
Here, they are the bottom rung of the economy and society. But in Senegal, many of these men were university educated and worked as teachers, managers, even doctors. As illicit traders working on the streets, it's a life often defined by their unpredictable relationship with the Camorra and police who want to shut them down.
Solo quello, ha paura di perdere, per quanto più perde quello...
I'm always worried all my bags could be seized, and then I lose everything. Then I can't send money home to my family. It's like having your shop burned down.
Come deve dire, è un negozio già bruciato.
The Senegalese are just one tiny cog in a mighty illicit economic machine that has virtually captured an entire city.
Naples is a good example of what happens when illicit trade runs rampant. The networks just take over and dominate the city.
No part of Naples better reflects the Camorra stranglehold than the rundown suburb of Scampia. Here, open-air drug markets appear to operate freely. Drugs make up the most lucrative part of the Camorra's operation. But from the perspective of an illicit business, perhaps the main appeal of Scampia is the supply of unemployed people ready to take whatever work the crime families provide.
E che Napoli non ce l'hai posti fatti. Ci hanno fatto faticare, sì, però ci hanno un mese e mezzo.
I do this work because in Naples there are no jobs. You can only get work for a month or so. If you don't sell drugs, how can you eat?
Some argue the illicit economy provides employment. Seviano sees another side.
Io considero il sistema purtroppo un moltiplicatore di profitto.
This underground economy does nothing to lift people out of poverty.
Uno sviluppo che ovviamente è uno sviluppo
Instead, a few Camorra bosses get rich very quickly.
che non crea miglioramento sociale.
The Camorra is a kind of second state here in Naples, in the sense that they provide money, they provide jobs instead of the state. And so they have a huge power over here, and they can control votes for the elections, so they can control the politics.
That power is a license to make money. One Italian business group estimated that the Camorra and other criminal organizations earned $120 billion last year. That's more revenue than Italy's largest corporation. These illegal corporate profits are dirty money, which is almost useless unless it can be washed clean. Money laundering conceals the true criminal source of the funds. It allows illicit crime to pay and to pay well. Money laundering offers the best glimpse of the total size of the world's illicit economy. Estimates put it as high as $5 trillion per year. The electronic banking boom has made it far easier to launder money.
When I asked a Swiss banker how much harder it had become after 9/11 to launder, say, $50 million, he looked at me, smiled, and said, "The only difference is that I now charge more."
Real estate is a popular way for criminals to put huge volumes of illicit money through the wash. On the outskirts of Naples, the Camorra built an entire housing complex. The sheer size of the project is an indicator of how much cash they needed to clean. The gangsters pay for land, materials, and construction workers with dirty cash. When they sell the property, The money they take in is clean. This site would have been worth more than $130 million. But these contractors haven't been hired by the Camorra. This is an Italian army demolition team. Destroying the project stopped the money laundering process. It also eliminated a development that was built with complete disregard for safety standards. But for every laundering scheme that stopped, many more reaped dramatic profits for illicit networks.
These networks now have so much money that they can buy immense political power. As a result, we're seeing all over the world a growing criminalization of politics, where criminals are getting into politics and politicians are becoming criminals.
No single individual better illustrates that transformation than Vladimiro Montesinos, the head of the intelligence service in Peru for 10 years. While in the job of fighting drug traffickers, he was running a drug smuggling network that was also involved in weapons dealing and money laundering. He relied on a comprehensive video recording system to incriminate all the people he bought off. These tapes, over 1,000 in all, became the evidence used to convict him.
This is now on a scale that we have never seen before. These people are running countries. The president of Lithuania, for example, was impeached because of his links with the Russian mafia. In Mexico, the general that was the head of the anti-drug police was also in the payroll of the drug cartel.
It's impossible to imagine that this volume of trade that is illicit can happen without the active complicity of government officials, armies, judges, magistrates, and police departments.
This kind of corruption doesn't just enrich generals and crooked bureaucrats. Here in Panama, it killed people. In the autumn of 2006, patients began flooding into a hospital in Panama City with a mysterious illness. Doctors knew they had a crisis on their hands, but struggled to find the cause.
In the first 24 hours, there is a sense that this could very well be an infectious disease of epidemic proportions, and that this could spread to the rest of the population. And it was quite frightening to think that this was going on and that we didn't know what it was.
Panama Canal employee Carlos Umanzor, a father of 7, began to develop severe symptoms.
Comenzó con fiebre alta,
He had a high fever, and he couldn't stop vomiting.
And the relatives were worried because their loved ones were very ill, but they had been living with them in their houses. So who was going to be next? My child, the wife, the mother. So it was uncertainty and fear.
Patients began to die in alarming numbers. Doctors worked frantically around the clock to find the source of the sickness. It was the case of Carlos Umanzor, the Panama Canal worker, which provided the clues to solve the mystery. He'd come in with a heart attack, but developed the same symptoms as the people who were dying.
His kidneys started to fail, then his lungs, his nervous system, and then finally he fell into a coma.
The doctors knew it must be something they were giving him. They tested every drug Carlos had been given, except a cough syrup. A test revealed it was poisoned, but it was too late. Carlos and over 21 others had already died.
Then it was like somebody had thrown cold water over me. How are we going to explain this? How are we going to explain to the people that we, the persons that are supposed to be giving health, we have poisoned the people that we're supposed to be caring for?
Thousands of bottles of this poisonous cough medicine had been unwittingly distributed to the poor and elderly all over Panama via their social security system.
We needed to get back more than 100,000 bottles because that was death that was out there.
A massive recall campaign was launched. Warnings were put out on radio and television. Neighborhoods were searched door to door. At the same time, the coroner began exhuming bodies and performing autopsies on those who had died suspicious deaths. The death toll climbed towards 100. How did such a calamity happen, and who was to blame for this tragedy? The poisonous pipeline stretched halfway across the world to rural China. The toxic ingredient was made by a company called Taixing Glycerin. Taixing appears to be a professional operation with an internet site featuring their headquarters building. But the reality is different. These buildings are the real Taixing. It turns out the high-rise belongs to an unrelated company located more than 160 kilometers away. Taixing officials simply put the photo on their site to lend credibility to their enterprise.
Taixing Glycerin Factory decided that they could make money by taking a cheap ingredient, which unfortunately happened to be poison, called diethylene glycol, which is an industrial solvent used in antifreeze, and to substitute that for its more expensive chemical cousin, which is glycerin, an ingredient that's safe and commonly used in medicine and food.
The poison was shipped out of China to a company in Barcelona called Rasfa, who apparently did not test the contents. The drums were bought by a broker in Panama called Medicom. They sold the lethal cargo to the Social Security system, who made it into cough syrup. Angel de la Cruz, a Medicom executive, was arrested in the midst of a public outcry about the mass poisoning, but claims he acted in good faith. China's regulators initially said they had no legal grounds to take action against Taixing. But they recently shut down the plant, 10 months after the deaths in Panama. The owner was never prosecuted.
They're criminals. They're criminals, and they may not be pulling a trigger, but they're essentially killing people in another way.
The Chinese government has promised sweeping changes in food and drugs regulation. And in 2007, on the heels of several fatal drug poisonings, the head of China's Food and Drug Administration was convicted of accepting nearly $1 million in bribes. He was executed.
In China, the tactic of killing one or two officials is called slaughtering a chicken to warn the monkeys. It's a dramatic and meaningless gesture. My analysis of government data shows that every year, only 3% of the officials convicted of corruption go to jail.
The transactions in China, Spain, and Panama that led to over 100 deaths are stark examples of the breadth of illicit trade. It's far too simple to say that buying a fake bag led to the deaths in Panama. But the supply chain, the brand of corruption, and the forces involved are the same. Last year, enforcement and customs agencies around the world spent billions of dollars trying to stop it. But experts agree, illicit trade is growing, unabated.
It is a war, and governments are losing it. In the 10 years I've been looking at this, I have not found one single instance where a government has successfully contained the growth of these trades. Governments are failing because they don't work effectively with other governments. They don't move as swiftly as the traffickers. They are trapped inside their borders.
There have been some victories. In 2007, Mexican authorities made one of the biggest drug busts in history and burned cocaine worth an estimated $400 million. American-led initiatives have destroyed 1 million small arms, which otherwise would have made it onto the open market. In Hong Kong, authorities destroy tons of fakes every week. But these efforts do little to stem the growth of illicit trade, a trend with dangerous implications. Experts fear that the same forces pumping millions of illicit goods into the global market may one day deliver a dirty bomb.
Terrorism kills people. Illicit trade kills people as well. But terrorism does not happen on a daily basis. Illicit trade does. It happens 24 hours a day.
We will never make progress in the fight against illicit trade unless we understand that at bottom, this is about buyers and sellers. We need to look at the demand, at the buyers that drive these trades. When we start talking about demand, only then will we stem the tide of illicit trade.